Hello and welcome to another episode of the TechSEO Podcast. My name is Dan Taylor, and on this slightly unscripted, unscheduled episode, I am joined by Natalia Witczyk and Gerry White. Today we're going to be discussing something quite important that's happened in the past 24 hours, and that is the ruling that Google has violated the Sherman Act in the US and has lost the DOJ antitrust trial. As of yet, no remedies have been issued against Google, only that the ruling has gone against them. As you would imagine, Google is planning to appeal this decision, claiming that its search dominance is not through underhand monopolistic tactics, such as paying Apple $20 billion a year to the right to be the default search engine. That's not anti-monopolistic at all, but is down to the fact their product is superior, and is that same superiority that in the early 2000s ward off the likes of Ask Jeeves, Lycos, and the other search engines of the time. So that is enough talking from me at the moment. I'm going to hand over to my esteemed guests who will share their views on this and what this means for the future of SEO. Natalia, handing over to you.
Hello, Dan. Thank you for having me. Starting off with a quick opinion, I think it's a fantastic news for every of Google's competitor. We still don't know what's the fine going to be exactly, because we just know the ruling for now. So we're still yet to know what's the actual impact on Google. But we expect it's going to be historically high, historically above the previous fines that Google has already paid in their past trials, because it's a bigger decision on a bigger level. But potentially a chance for smaller search engines to break through, because there will be noise around competition of Google, and maybe this is the chance for Brave Search, Ask Jeeves might, come back and do something. Who knows? There's maybe a new player in the game, maybe not the old folks, maybe the new player, and probably Bing. So I can't wait for changes in the search engine landscape. When I mean changes, I don't mean suddenly there will be other monopoly instead of Google. I mean, probably bouncing off 10% of their market share already will be considered a success in this case.
Gerry, what are your initial thoughts after the ruling?
Yeah, I mean, well, Google and Chrome and Android have got such a crazy market share. Like 65% of the browser usage is Chrome, and even those that aren't using Chrome, it's like Apple, who are already sort of paid by Google to kind of use them. Android is like 70% of the global market share. It's going to make a huge impact, and for all of us who kind of live on Google, it is kind of interesting. I mean, going back to what Natalia was saying, I'm trying to think who I would use instead of Google, and I can't really think of anybody. I mean, Search GPT is coming out, which is going to be interesting. I don't know what that's going to look like, but there's also going to be hundreds of others. But quite honestly, I've tried quite a few of them, and I tend to come back to Google every single time. So it'll be, despite the ruling, it'll be challenging to kind of shift user behavior in any kind of significant manner.
We'll touch on Search GPT probably towards the end of this podcast, because I think that's probably a conversation in its own right as to whether or not it'll even ever kind of get out the dry dock, so to speak. Natalia, one thing you mentioned which was interesting there was going to be around the fines that Google may receive from this. Do you think that, and this is an open question to both of you, do you think it will stop at just fines, or do you think we'll see other measures and remedies in place like we have in the Russian market 3 years ago, for example? The context around that, the Russian Roskomnadzor, which is the anti-monopoly federal service, decided that Google was operating monopolistically from a complaint made by Yandex, and Google were forced to develop a widget on all of Android devices in Russia, which is about an 80-85% penetration over there, that allowed users to pick a default search engine, whereas historically they weren't. And the market shifted from a 50-50 kind of Google Yandex split to more of a 65-35 over the past 2 years for Yandex. Do you think we could see something similar to that happening in the US, and then that might then trigger other precedent across Europe and Asia?
I'm hoping yes. Potentially, since all the agreements will be deemed monopolistic, asking every single user in the US today what's their default search engine could be one of the measures. Because obviously Chrome users have used that choice without consenting to it in the first place. So that would be potentially interesting. I think from the US Department of Justice point of view, they want to send a signal as well for the future. It's the first time such a big case is taking place. So they might go for extreme measures just to kind of push that conversation further, because I think monopolistic conversations have not been happening enough in this internet era. They used to happen loads centuries ago, and now suddenly it's became kind of a normalized thing that monopolies exist. And I think we're back on that conversation. So yeah, the measures might be exemplary.
Yeah, I think the statistics which have been centered on in the trial was something like in 2009, Google had an 80% market share of the search engine market. Now it's around 90% as of 2020. So I know that's only a 10% rise over 10 years, but in realistic terms of a number of additional internet users, that is highly significant. Gerry, what are your thoughts around whether or not we might see more than just fines going to Google here?
Yeah, I hope that basically Google and Android and Chrome are pushed to kind of open up. Do you really want to use Google every time? I mean, when I load up when I load up Chrome, it automatically logs into Google in every single direction. I'm sure at one point we were told that, we had choices, we could kind of log in and log into other search engines, but I don't remember seeing that in the past few years. It might be because I log in with a Google account that's pre-logged in, but even so, I do find that, there's never kind of an opportunity when Google kind of says, hey, you sure you want to use Google? Which I can understand from their point of view, but the same with Android. I do think like the default search engine automatically comes up every single time as Google. And I think user behavior as well isn't going to warrant the people kind of changing it. If you're asked which search engine you want to use, it's going to be challenging for anybody to turn around and say, I want to use the random search engine that I've never heard of. And we all know that Bing for a while was not always the best. I know that it's got a lot better recently, but at one point it was Google or Bing, and Bing just wasn't the greatest experience.
I think just kind of building off a couple of the kind of things you said there. So it is possible on Android devices and within Chrome to change your default search engine. It is buried within the settings, but I kind of think an interesting point you kind of raised there is just how tied the browser login is to the rest of the experience and managing that ecosystem, and that isn't necessarily an easy ecosystem to break. But kind of going off another thing you mentioned about search engines people haven't heard of, and this ties back to something Natalia said earlier on, things like Brave search and other elements like that coming through. DuckDuckGo across Europe and the US has done a considerable out-of-home and digital advertising kind of brand awareness campaign over the past few years. Bing, the last statistics I saw, have increased from sort of 6% to 8%, which again, we're not talking huge numbers, but for Bing, that's phenomenal in terms of market share, especially against Google's monopoly, as we can now legally call it, I guess. Do you think the majority and the mass number of internet users have reached a level of maturity now and a level of understanding and everything they're consuming through mass media, the fact that hacks and other things and data leaks and people are becoming more data conscious, that if this is opened up, both search engines with that privacy as a USP, such as Brave and DuckDuckGo, could actually gain a higher penetration from this and potentially even overtake the likes of Bing, which have kind of been a stagnant second child for a number of decades?
People really do care about their privacy. They are just completely clueless about it. And whenever somebody kind of opens up a web page that says, do you want to accept all 216 partners that we're sharing cookies with? Nobody ever reads that number except for probably us three and another digital marketer who go 216. I could only name 12 or 20 or 30 of them. My point is that, we care about our privacy, but we don't really understand it. And the fact that our information has been shared, my smart TV has got 269 partners that it's sharing cookies with. And I don't really understand how a smart TV uses cookies exactly. But the point is that there is so much out there that's happening with in terms of our user privacy that the average person doesn't understand or even care about, because quite honestly, as a man who lives in a country like the UK whose kind of religion and general kind of identity is so bland, it's unbelievable. I don't worry about anybody really kind of targeting me and selling me extra car mats for my car. But in other countries and other kind of cities and other kind of political situations, privacy suddenly becomes a crucial element. And that, of course, is where people are trying to figure it all out far more. My point is that, we all kind of care about our privacy, but we're very, very quick to click, yes, accept cookies, because we don't know what cookies are.
Do you think that lack of understanding could also be one of the things that sees this market shift? Because like you said, the lack of understanding can be an inverted weakness for a number of other competitors out there. So Google is often portrayed in media as big corp, and there's always this internal justification to stand up against the big corporations, support the independents, support the little guys, because inherently we appreciate the underdog stories. So if Google is portrayed as this big corporation doing bad things with our data, that could, like I said, be the inverted weakness. But yes, the mass market doesn't understand this. That plays into our favor, and then that gives leverage and attractiveness, I guess, to the DuckDuckGos, to the Brave searches, to viewers. Moving away from privacy, how do you think the AI search race will go into this, and potentially other things as well? So the argument of TikTok being a discovery engine, for example, will we see more people potentially carry on the shift there, or what are your thoughts?
I think there is an interesting potential happening with Google having to split up their products and not being one big company that dominates all those things like Android, Chrome, search engine, Gmail. And if that happened, which I'm not sure if the law would go that far to actually make Google split, but if it did, that could be a potential for other smaller search engines to occupy that space, in a sense that they would serve a different purpose than Google does now, because Google is this one-stop shop place now for everything digital almost. Other than social media, because that didn't work out, but they wanted to be that too. And if you think about it, if they had to split, then TikTok would be a different search experience from Perplexity, from Search GPT, and then maybe there's a chance for like more of a shopping kind of e-commerce experience. Search engine will be completely different, and that actually happens already in China. Again, it's not a big market share, but there is a search engine that's Shenma, that's specifically for Alibaba's group product side of things. And I think there is a chance that this could be replicated, and then the user journey will be very fragmented.
It's interesting. Sorry, Gerry.
No, I was just going to say, basically, I agree with that. I mean, a lot of us now, when we start to search for a product, we start on Amazon. I know some of us aren't big fans of Amazon, but I literally go straight there for almost every purchase. I can't remember what I got delivered today. I think it's permanent pens and sticky labels for some jars that I've got. I know. I could probably have gone and bought them from a local shop down the road, but that would have involved leaving the flat.
I think as well we need to appreciate how different my search journey is, because like you said, you start on Amazon. A common search journey I see a lot in e-commerce at the moment is people will start on Google, look for specific products, look for expertise, then copy the SKU, copy the ISBN, copy the product title, then you shove it onto eBay, shove it onto Amazon and the third-party marketplaces. I was going to say, it's interesting that you raise China as an element there, Natalia, because obviously Baidu operates very differently to how Google is, and Baidu predominantly owns a lot of the ecosystem and it's bought into a lot more. Obviously with shopping, taxis, payments, different things like that across there. Given how Google's ecosystem currently is, and as you said, we don't think the law's going to potentially go that far. It breaks up the monopolistic side of things. But using international engines as an example, Yandex has a similar structure to Baidu in the sense they have market, they have taxi, they have at one point, they actually had a registered trademark for a food delivery brand in Europe and London at one point, which kind of didn't take off for political reasons, shall we say. But similarly, they had legislation against them not too many years ago, I think in the last couple of years, in which they had to reduce the number of occasions Yandex search features were appearing in search, because that was being seen as anti-monopolistic. Google is facing a similar thing at the moment in Europe with the DMA, Digital Markets Act, specifically targeting travel and hotels. So from a more hardware perspective, do we feel this is potentially more of a remedy route that the DOJ will go down and enforce on Google across the US? Because that is a considerable marketplace to try and break that up, that defaultness from, I guess.
One of the questions there is if everything's sort of broken up and Google suddenly Gmail and Docs and all of the different parts that make up Google are broken up, will they stay being free or cheap?
That's a great question.
So the other kind of couple of questions I have around this, and kind of the last two, I guess, to kind of tie this off. What does this mean for, I guess, this is kind of more wider ethical and culture, but specifically with DOJ, if they enforce it, so about say, I know, by October 1st, Google has to send a ping to every Android device in the US, similar to the early warning system. Hi guys, here is an option. Please pick your default search engine and provide a government vetted, unbiased. This is Google. This is what Google does. Here is DuckDuckGo, privacy focused. So it's not just a like the standard SaaS blog list of 10 best products. Here's our number one, and then like piecemeal to every other 9. What if people then choose like DuckDuckGo, which is obviously powered by Bing search index, and then after 3 months they all go back to Google? What does that mean for this legislation? What does that then mean for any potential fines, and how does that affect potentially breaking up tech monopolies going forward?
That's an interesting scenario, because if the user was given the choice, they picked something else and they came back to the original product, then obviously Google's press release that was very feisty, to say something, it would have meant it's true. The product is better. And we're not talking about monopoly that's been bought by having those agreements that are worth billions. It's actually the user choice. And I think then we have to kind of step away and see how we go about in the future. But I think that if users are forced to make that choice and some of them choose differently, they will not come back. Users get used to things. I think not many will directly try it and be like, no. I think they will give it a couple of days and they will get used to it. At least that's my wishful thinking.
What if the service isn't as good as they used to? Because I did try DuckDuckGo, and weirdly enough, there was some massive glaring kind of omissions in it. When I searched for certain brands, certain companies, certain pages, certain information, I was like, oh, I expected to find, trying to give an example, my favorite takeaway company there. I tried to find something particularly there. And I was like, this is really weird. Like there is some kind of weird omission. So I went back to Google and I was like, yep, I'm familiar. This is my kind of home. This is where I live.
I kind of guess my last question, man, kind of building off this, is say that scenario does happen and users have the whole, you have to make a different choice, and there is not a alternate universe I can imagine in which, if this is a case of October 1st, you have to do this, where Bing, DuckDuckGo, Ecosia, I mean, even what's the one that Antitrust is making? Hey, you. Yep, that's it. I knew it was 3 letters. Yeah, like there is not, like I said, a universe where they do not basically take the next 3 years worth of advertising budget and throw hell for Mary at this to get that market share. So it's like a vote, essentially. It becomes an election for default search engines where they take that market share, and October 2nd we have a whole new world. As an industry, yeah, okay, some of us look at Bing, some of us don't, most of us don't, but how geared are we as an industry for October 2nd, for the hypothetical October 2nd, in which 20%, probably 20% worst case scenario of our traffic has gone from Search Console and it's now coming through Bing, and we're not ranking the same, or we're going through a Bing powered engine? How prepared do you think, and how adaptable are we? Because a lot of the tools focus on Google, don't have a Bing data. I can't think of a single tool off the top of my head, apart from maybe 1 or 2 that even have TikTok, Instagram, or even DuckDuckGo kind of stuff. So that's going to cause a lot of anxiety in our industry, and that's probably another podcast episode on its own that we need to record on. But how would you go around preparing for October 2nd if that is the case scenario?
For me, the first step is, as you said, the tools. And we have to be aware that many of those private search engines don't share a lot of data at all. And there's no Search Console type of tool at all available for Brave or Ecosia or DuckDuckGo. But I think the day they understand they have an opportunity convincing the SEO people to actually promote it among their clients, they might actually come up with a tool for us, because we are the drive makers for the businesses. And if we put them on the map, something to optimize for, obviously that's giving them the exposure they need. So I think they would work on it. And then I don't know if we can name the tools, because there's 2 tools on the market that actually represent a lot of minor search engines. So there's Dragon Metrics and AWR. And these are the 2 tools that actually will be winning the most on this, I guess, because they are already equipped to to check rankings for all those, but almost all those minor search engines.
No, definitely. We'll just take a quick 5 seconds to say hi, Simon, because no doubt he'll have brand tracking and sales. He'll hear it's mentioned in the transcript. So hope you're doing well. Gerry?
Yeah, no, absolutely that. I do find it amazing just how many companies I've spoken to, or I've kind of said, "Oh, can I get access to Google and Bing?" And they've kind of gone, "Oh, Bing." It seems a bit of a surprise to me that not every company out there is kind of understanding that it's a 2-second job, especially if you've got Google already. If you've got Google Search Console, you can get Bing automatically, and a lot of people don't do that. And then when they kind of log in, it shows some errors, some issues, and then from that point, they are missing like 5 to 10% already. And if this comes about and there's a huge percentage more, and as Natalia's and you've said, basically a lot of these tools, sorry, not these tools, these search engines are powered by Bing. Kind of understanding at least Bing itself is a great first step. I mean, the other side of it, of course, is the fact that if there's a half a dozen different search engines out there, monitoring half a dozen different search engines and presenting this information back in a meaningful way, without clients kind of looking at us kind of going, well, no, this is just too much. I think we need to kind of make sure that we actually understand a way of painting the picture that says, this is the percentage of traffic coming from all the different search engines. This one's not as good as it should be. You should be getting more DuckDuckGo. And the other interesting part about it is the fact that DuckDuckGo, for instance, there's no way to get keyword data at all. So suddenly, keyword data is going to disappear from an increasing percentage of the traffic that we get. And most of our clients like keyword data. In fact, we like keyword data. We want to know actually what people are doing versus what we think people are doing, because we know people are different to how we expect them to behave on the internet.
No, definitely. I think there's going to be that crossover, especially with let's call them the tertiary search engines for now, because if we go by the data, they hold less than a 2-3% market share. But it's whether or not the value propositions of those search engines align with the same value propositions of our customer portraits and the client customer portraits. Because if they are heavily, I've worked with privacy email and privacy VPNs in the past, and DuckDuckGo is huge for them because it aligns with their value proposition. It aligns with their ICP base. Same with things like Brave. So I kind of guess that's going to draw this kind of the impromptu podcast to an end, because we're kind of running towards more time. So that is everything this episode. Thank you again to Natalia and Gerry for taking time out in literally less than 4 hours notice to jump on the podcast and share their thoughts and feelings about what is, for me, actually making SEO a very interesting practice again. And I don't know about everyone else, but I kind of like the fact that the next 12 months is going to be a little bit uncertain and there's going to be something new, and it's not just going to be the standard BAU and AI fear-mongering, I kind of guess. So thank you all for listening, whether or not you're at home, in the office, in the car, or screaming into an Excel spreadsheet at the top of your lungs. If you like this episode, please don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Please do drop a like. Please also do drop your thoughts in the comments below, and I might bring some people onto an episode and we can do another one of this and share more viewpoints, especially if you disagree with Gerry. So I've been Dan Taylor, and this has been the Tech SEO Podcast. Thank you very much for watching. Bye, everyone.